Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special Intersex Day of Awareness edition of the Trans and Intersex History Africa Archival Conversations. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I am your host. And today we celebrate, honor, and reflect on the incredible journey of the intersex movement in Africa, its roots, its resilience, its vision for the future, its survival. Our guest today does not need a lot of introduction. Julius Kaggwa is a pioneer, a visionary, and a founding figure of the intersex movement, not only in Uganda, but in Africa. So help me welcome our special guest, Julius Kaggwa from Uganda. Yes, my brother Julius, welcome to the show.
Hi, Victor. It's so good to be here.
Yeah.
It's so good to be in conversation with you. It's been long overdue.
For me, it's so good to see your smile after so many years of not really seeing you. So welcome and thank you for honoring this invitation. So unlike every day, this is my elder brother, and I won't go into the nitty-gritties as usual about fun facts and all that. I do not want to waste this old man's time. So let's begin, Julius, by going back to the early days. Your founding of SIPID, the Support Initiative for People with Atypical Sex Development, which is the second, would say outside of South Africa, is the first intersex organization in the rest of Africa. And for me, that is big because South Africa, when it comes to the journey, is a little bit different from the rest of Africa. So this is the first intersex organization in the rest of Africa. SIPID, how did it all begin, Julius? And what was driving you then?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. I mean, for me, the beginning, normally people have like a moment, but I think for me and for SIPID generally, right from the start, the goal was to end shame, it was to end silence. And I could say that I kind of just stumbled into it in some way because for several years I had kind of just I was able through my faith and through my support system kind of able to navigate my way through that experience, the experience of being born with an intersex condition, but I was in South Africa and I received kind of a plea. A friend of mine said, are you able to come back home? Because I was working there. And also, I think I could also boldly say that I was working there, but it was my way of hiding also,
Right.
Yeah.
When you say that, it takes me back to the beginning, how you say it was a way of curbing, of fighting shame. You mentioned the word shame. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, shame? Because I was hiding. The shame is you have this body that is not exactly like John next door.
Yes.
There are things that you're expected to do and expected to become that you're not becoming, and you don't have an explanation for it. You have never heard of anybody else experiencing that. And coming from the tribal backgrounds that we come from, there are all kinds of narratives around why this could be happening. Maybe you're being bewitched or all of, so many narratives that you do not want to engage with. So hiding there, I had done computer programming. I was good doing my work, had community, in Cape Town. And then this came. I was told that there is a young boy who is going to be whose story is going to be aired on top radio.
And in Uganda.
Yes, and
Mm,
his uncle is looking for um, well wishers, people who can contribute maybe to his operation or his upkeep. His uncle was a gatekeeper at Mwiri in Busoga.
mm, mm,
So this friend said, I know that you're a Christian, and this top radio is a Christian radio. This boy is so young. We don't think that it's right for him to go on and kind of be asked questions.
mm.
So I
Which year
I
was
kind
this, Julius?
I beg your pardon.
In which year was this?
This was in 2003.
2003. The boy
This,
was had
yeah,
intersex
the
condition.
boy was later. I think he was at that time. He was, I think, 12, around there. So
All
we
right.
negotiated. My friend negotiated with the top radio at that time.
Mm,
I forget. I think the guy who was hosting that talk show was Kamago or somebody like that.
mm,
So they negotiated and postponed the talk show.
mhm,
I had to think about it. I had to think about what that means.
mm,
So for me, like I said, I accidentally went into it, but there was also a faith element.
mm,
I had to internally really interrogate and I will say it here without shame, what God would want me to do in this situation.
mm,
Was
mhm.
it safe for me to keep being in South Africa, safe when
Mm.
so many young children were being subjected to traumatic
Right,
interviews, you know?
right.
So I
Mm.
said, you know what? I'll go and
Oh.
kind of do that interview as long as it's on radio or talk to this host. And so that is how I made my way back
Hmm.
and went to top radio. I had, of course, that friend of mine. I will leave her name out, but
Right.
she's a dear friend for so many years. So we
Mm.
went there. We talked to this host, and I said, "Look, I have had that experience myself, and I know the questions that you're going to ask are going to harm this child for the rest of his life." You know, the people who call into those radio stations to ask questions are
Right.
very insensitive. They will
Yeah.
ask things. So that is how it started, actually. So I did that. They gave me a room in that studio there. It wasn't even a room really. It was a van. So this
Mm.
boy was there. I asked them if I can talk to him,
Right.
and I had a conversation with him. I had a conversation with the uncle, and after that, there was no returning to South Africa. I actually kind of started SIPID as a ministry at that point.
Mm.
That is how
It
it all
was
started.
your heart yearning to protect
Yes,
some.
yes,
Wow, that is very, very powerful, Julius. In fact, I didn't know that this is how your story begins. That is very personal and more like a calling, you know.
it
But
is.
and then you were able to support this boy through
Yes.
it all.
Then I got in touch with my friend runs like an orphanage and something like that.
Right.
So we started to look for help for
Mm.
this boy, but not through the media.
Right.
He's a young, well, an adult right now, working
That's
and
good.
thriving in Entebbe right now. I think he's almost 40 or something, 30 something,
That's the life you
32
touched.
maybe. Yeah, so we did find support for him
Mhm.
along Entebbe Road.
Mm.
One of the ministries there took him in, and they started to support him in school and teach
Is
him
it
other
possible
things.
this
Yeah,
ministry that you talk about, this
yeah,
ministry, and
yeah,
for those who are listening, this is something Christian that we are talking about that took in
yeah,
this boy. Did you have
yeah.
to do some work with them prior to that, or were they
No,
aware of this condition before?
no. I mean, I must also say that part of what made my journey a little easier is I was a church child.
Hmm.
For so many years, I was in the church, and this friend of mine who called me was also in the church and
Right.
doing work with ministry. So there were people that were known. It
Mm.
wasn't so easy. I mean, it wasn't so hard to kind of locate people who could help.
Right.
And my story had gone round a little bit, at least within the church circles that I was a part of.
Mm.
So there wasn't a lot of explaining then. But
Right.
what we had to do now was to educate about the condition, about how to kind of create awareness around it. But I must also tell you that at that point, all the awareness that we are thinking about had to be wrapped around Christian ethos.
Right.
You know, you are not allowed to kind of step outside that into the human rights
Yes.
kind of conversation. It was
Yes.
very strictly within the Christian ethos of saying, this is somebody that God cares about. This is the situation. How do we make this? How do we sensitize people around it? So in the beginning, the human rights aspect wasn't so much in the mix.
Mm.
It was mainly really a calling to stop silence, to stop the shame and say, here we are, we're all creatures, we're all made by God in all our diversities, and we deserve to be recognized. Essentially, it was a human rights thing, but the human rights word wasn't being said.
Right.
Yeah.
And how does that turn into SIPID? Because then.
So then after that, when this boy was in that place, we started to look for. We got the uncle was coming from Mwiri in Soga, so he kind of went around, and we got calls from the same radio about two other babies from
Wow.
Tororo.
Mm.
And so that is how. So they came and we
These people
started to
had
talk.
listened in to that show.
Because they had been announcing it, but on the
Yeah.
day of the show, the boy wasn't there. The uncle did sit in the studio and answered some
Yeah.
questions, but the boy wasn't there.
Mm.
So the radio got two other calls from Tororo,
Wow.
and when those came in, we tried to track them. Still with my friend, and when I went to Tororo, I met. They were part of World. You've heard of World Vision.
Yes.
So yeah, so we were trying to find people within the localities where these babies are to support from there, because remember there was no organization or anything, and
No.
so I linked up with, and I have to remind you that all of this time I'm coming from the Christian side of
Yes.
things. So I looked for World Vision there, which is also
It's also
an
Christian.
organization. Yeah, it's a Christian organization,
Yeah.
and I linked up with them. I had friends there, and so that is at that point is where SIPID, I think, begins to come into formation.
Wow.
That we talk about providing a space for counseling, for collecting, these stories and trying to see who can help. So I
Right.
start to look for spaces at Crane, which is Children at Risk Action Network, at World Vision, and that is how the thought comes. But at that point, it is not an organization. It is still an idea.
Yes. So when do you say SIPID was founded?
So SIPID was officially founded in 2008. But all of these things I'm talking about have been happening in the background. Then
Right.
I think around 2007 there, early 2007, another friend, actually Dawn at Macquarie University, I went to talk to her about some, because she was also one of those people who were encouraging me to kind of answer the calling and saying you cannot remain silent and all of that.
Yeah.
She was one of those people. And when I am in her office there having a talk about all of these things. She mentions that there's a group of young people who have their own stories, not
Yeah.
not exactly like mine, but it is
Yes.
still there are still stories of difference, of trying to navigate how to live in a culture that normalizes, the binary and sees everything in black and white and all of that. And these
Yeah.
were, about three young people sitting on Bomba Road, Kampala Road, somewhere
On Bombo
there.
Road.
Bomba Road, Bomba Road. Um, and she was saying that, one of them,
Mm.
actually people think that it might be you and all of that because people have
Uh-huh.
never seen you and
Yeah.
all of that. So um, she connects me to a group of young people who used
Mm.
to sit on Bomba Road, and you were one of those young people. Um, and Kasha,
And I was that person that was being mistaken
yes,
to be you.
and Kasha,
Yes.
um, and I think those are the two that I first met, and then I think uh, Val came in a
Val,
little bit
yes.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that when I met you,
Mm.
and then kind of got exposed to the other stories, how
Mm.
wide the net of people that don't really fall into the expectations
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm. Of
societal
society. Mm.
of society are.
Mm.
That is where then the idea of really formalizing this like comes
Right.
from. and
Right.
and and, and you might remember this, actually. I don't know if you do, but a little bit after that, fast forward maybe a year or two after
Mm.
that, other young people like Nikki, whatever,
Mm.
Junik, come into
Mm.
play, and we
Yes.
try to put a space together where people can talk about their experiences. We all had different experiences and
Mm.
different kind of identities, and
Mm.
we toyed around with, a support group called TEETS and
Yes.
that. Yeah. And then I realized that, okay, TEETS was not really representing like the
No.
children and the
Mm.
people that I wanted to represent. But we
Yes.
had our intersections. And so
Yes.
it was at that point that I actually stepped out and founded SIPID formally in
Wow.
2008 to focus specifically on intersex children and people.
Wow, that's that, it's always good for these stories to be told. Like I'm also learning. You're taking me down memory lane, but I'm learning a lot of things that I had skipped
Yeah.
during that period. And
Yeah.
for all those who are involved in Julius' life, thank you. Those who have just joined us, this is Julius Kaggwa, a friend of mine, a brother of mine, but also a pioneer in the intersex movement in Africa, whose work has really impacted lives, especially lives of young children in Africa. You heard from that story, a little boy's life was changed because of his commitment and his decision to live his life in South Africa, come back home and hold people's hands. So thank you so much, Julius. But Julius, you've already spoken about the baby A case, a
Yeah.
heartbreaking yet historic moment that forced society and policymakers to pay attention. Tell us about
Yeah.
that case and what it meant for Uganda and the movement as a whole. Baby A
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. The baby A case was a Kenyan case. It wasn't a Ugandan case. It
Ah,
was a baby who was in Kenya, just months old,
mm.
who, there were issues around issuing a certificate and
Like a birth certificate?
a birth certificate, citizenship issues, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is how it ended up in court in Kenya. It was a
Mhm.
really, really huge case. And why I say that is because it was one of those cases that provided an opportunity
Mm,
for scientists, because our leaders love to engage with scientists. They love science-based
mhm,
kind of conclusions or presentations. And the
mm,
baby A case and the violations that were around it provided an opportunity for a laboratory in Kenya to analyze
Baby A.
the issue around the baby and to produce a report that shows evidence of indeterminate sex at birth. This was not something that the child chose. So
Right.
I think it was pivotal in establishing that intersex is an innate
Right.
variation that is present at birth,
Yes.
evidenced by science, and a court based on that report to
In Kenya.
determine, yes, a Kenyan court based on that report to determine that baby A was intersex and gave
Wow.
what do they call that, a decree, or a decree that they be registered, as a citizen. And what that
Wow.
did was that, normally in Africa, and I don't think that this is a secret, normally in Africa, we use evidence that is produced by the West. We quote cases that come from, countries in the West that have done this before us, but we never really had a case that was pronounced or determined upon by an African court.
Right.
And for us here in Uganda, that was an East African court, a court based in Kenya. And that gave us, emboldened us, actually, at that point, to also start engaging with our Uganda Human Rights Commission. At that time, it was under Commissioner Kaggwa. And there was also lawyers in Kenya who he's a Chief Justice right now. Back then, he was counsel, John Chigiti. And we began to it opened a whole new legal space for us.
Wow.
To engage with, to the extent that our very first kind of stakeholder meeting had people coming from Kenya, including counsel, lawyers from there, lawyers from Rwanda and Burundi,
Wow.
Human Rights Initiative Rwanda, GMAT in Kenya, and these lawyers, it kind of opened the regional conversation around intersex and the Uganda Human Rights Commission. So it was really, really pivotal, but also more so in Kenya, that started a series of litigation events, as you know, that eventually led a couple of years ago to Kenya actually passing a law to protect intersex children.
Wow. And this is where it comes from. Julius, which years were these when this happened? The scientific investigation, court processes.
This was in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009. At least that is when I kind of made contact with Chigiti on kind of expert witness things like that, just to it was around 2009.
So this case, the details of it are you can commonly just search baby A case on the internet.
Yes.
Just for those who want to go deeper, because this is a big resource also for
absolutely
for all of us.
And people who are watching us or listening to us, they will find there was also another Richard Mukasa case. People can look it up. Who was imprisoned in Kenya. That compounded the baby A case. This was an intersex person who was imprisoned, and then once in prison, they took him to the women's cell, and the women were saying, no, this is not a woman. They took him to the men's cell, and the men were saying, no, this is not a man. But that also eventually came back to court and continued to shed light on the journey of intersex people and the kind of the continuum of variations. Conditions that people kind of live with.
So your connections with this, case and people who were involved in it, did that fuel, work at CIPID or the formalization of the formation of CIPID, and what other effects did it have? Because now we are seeing other people coming in from Tanzania, from Rwanda. Did this case in particular, the baby A case, have any impact within the sub-region or region as a whole of Africa?
Yes,
Some
it did.
specific.
Yeah,
Mm.
it did, especially here in East Africa. As I
Yes.
mentioned, I think it's one of the things.
Mm.
Um,
Cheers.
it's, cheers.
Mm.
It's one of those cases
Mm.
that made Commissioner Kaggwa
Yes.
really sit down to listen to us, because
Because
these
you
are
say
people
that the scientific investigation was done by Africans.
absolutely, and it was a Kenyan court. So this was a Kenyan child. It was
Mm.
an African child,
Mhm.
um, and the issue was being kind of engaged with by Kenyan scientists, laboratories, and tests, and
African
all of that,
laboratories, yes.
and a Kenyan court.
Yeah.
You know, it was relatable. There was no pressure, that the pressure that normally comes where people feel the West is kind of
Right.
trying to push down an agenda.
Influencing our yeah.
That was completely absent, and it really
Mm.
made the
Mm.
commissioner sit and engage and try and start to ask. And what actually happened is that he was so interested in the two babies who were in Tororo,
Mm.
and that really, in a way, gave us leverage. And I must also say that it made our registration a lot easier
Wow.
in the year that followed, because I mean, for those of you who know Uganda, that case provided a kind of a platform, a
Right.
threshold for us to engage from, um, and start to have a conversation that is relatable,
And
that
it still
concerns
has the potential right now, today.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
history is like that. It's
Yeah.
still very, 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 very viable even up to now.
Wow, Julius, because for me, I'm going now. It's going to be my first deep engagement with this case, and I see it as a big resource, even for my own activism in
Yep.
everything else. So, thank you so much for highlighting that. Uh, um, but also the years that you mentioned, the late 2000s, early 2010s, those are also the years when we were having the anti-homosexuality law debates in Uganda, the first Kill the Gays bill. And during this period, intersex people
Yeah.
were often wrongly lumped together with other identities in the
Yeah.
backlash, which was big. How did CIPID and the wider intersex movement navigate that complex and dangerous landscape that it was?
Yeah.
Because those are the years, those are the
I
10
mean,
years.
absolutely, it was. It was around that. It was 2009, and in that same year, towards the end of that year,
Mhm,
the anti-homosexuality bill was tabled,
mhm,
and there was a lot of going back and forth before it was passed it into law.
mm,
And SIPID and I actually, as a person,
yeah,
didn't escape that much. I must say, I
yeah.
was really at the center of it in many
Yeah,
ways.
I remember so well with
Yeah,
the leadership of the
yeah,
advocacy.
and absolutely. And I think, I think at the time, what I mean, if you remember that bill came. It was the anti-homosexuality bill, but it wasn't so much about homosexuality, really. It
Mhm.
was um, it was against humanity. I think that is how we
Right,
saw it, and it was not
right.
just me
Mm.
being at the forefront of leading um, kind of the team,
The human rights
that
defenders that
the
were
human rights defenders. It
mm,
was so many other allies, from the women's movement, from the
right
children's movement,
from
from the
academia
disability,
also.
yes, from academia, from the disability movement,
Mhm,
because some of the most horrendous clauses, provisions in that bill
mm,
said that everybody who knew or who was related to, who was connected to somebody suspected of being, a homosexual, was
mm.
uh, had the potential to be a criminal.
Yes.
And some of the work that people were doing, counseling, it was against even the ethos
Pastor.
of some of the professions that people held, like counseling, like doctors, the ethos of confidentiality, of
Right.
trust, all of those things. So it
Mm.
was a huge human rights attack. And
Yeah.
so, and I was also young, I was like, I need to be, my voice has to be there. I have to
Yeah.
say something. That
The
was
protector
one.
in you would not remain
Yeah, that
silent.
was one. Then number two
Mm. Mm.
was, you remember this young group that I had met,
Mhm.
um, from the sexual minority side
Mm.
of things. They were also
Mm.
young, you yourself inclusive. They
Yeah.
were young.
You're crazy.
There were just so many things. I think I also saw myself as the older person, apart from
Yeah.
the late David Kato,
Yeah.
as the older person. But I also thought I could say something because I wasn't really in within that community. I wasn't
Mm.
a gay person. I wasn't a
I,
homosexual person.
I want to remind you because I was in that community you're talking about. David
Yes,
Kato might have been older than you, but you held this demeanor of papa, at your age, you still
yes,
held it, a big uncle and stuff like that.
yes. So I was like, I can speak. I can
Yeah.
speak, and yeah, I can because remember when we were coming together with all of
Mm.
the allies, we
Yeah.
needed to put a face up, out there that was
Mm.
not homosexual because
Yes.
but was affected by this,
Hmm.
who was part
Mm.
of this. There were so many intersections, and I could as well very easily be passed on as one
Yeah.
for so many
For,
reasons,
for, for supporting
So
of criminals.
absolutely.
Mm.
So I was actually in the thick of it
Mm.
for the first like 6 months of that campaign. All of you
Mm.
were in this. So many people. Actually, that first fight brought so many of us
Mm.
together, from the Refugee Law Project, from Makerere, from
Mm.
FIDA, from which
From all the women's
Center for Domestic
organizations.
Violence, just so many people who were
Mm.
saying no. This is so CPID in its infancy. Even at that point, we were really
Yeah.
in the thick of things, and
Mm.
I did speak out, and it's something that I don't really regret.
Mm.
Up until this day, I do not think that some of those harsh, scapegoating people and
Mm.
hurting people and killing people and making people's lives impossible,
Mm.
just because they're gay or lesbian or trans or
Mm.
whatever is justified. I don't think it's something that I'll ever be really quiet about. Um, yeah, so I wasn't out of it, but like I said, I think after 6 months, it kind of really got a bit tough, because of the traveling, but also because of the threats that came with it. There were several threats that I decided to take a step back and
Mm.
handed the reins on to someone else who was a legal
Mm.
person, because this was a
Mm.
legal issue.
Right.
So handed the reins on to a legal person to take
Right.
that fight forward.
Right. I mean, Julius, we will remember you for your contributions, not just in the intersex movement, but the general human rights movement in Uganda. And yeah, this takes me down to it takes me down memory lane. Anyway, for those who have just joined us, this is Julius Kaggwa from Uganda, a pioneer in the intersex movement in Africa, somebody who has held the hand of so many of us, supported us through challenges. But not only that, Julius has, and the work of Julius, his legacy, is still holding and supporting children in Africa. Because of his earlier work, a lot of children in Africa are escaping those horrible acts of mutilation and so many other things that happen to them as intersex children. So we thank Julius. And again, I say Julius is not just a father over there in the intersex movement and everything, but he is a founding member of this digital archive. And a lot of what we do is representative of what he believes in. And today we are just so lucky that Papa has come back to tell the story, to share it with all of us so that we continue growing out of our history, learning out of our history. So thank you so much, Julius, for everything that you have done for humanity and that you keep doing for humanity. So one of the most powerful cultural moments was, we go into something else, My Secret Life documentary that opened so many eyes. What impact? Can you tell us about that film and also the impact that it had or has had on conversations around intersex issues, both locally and internationally? My Secret Life.
Yeah. I think I will take you back to our previous conversation. My Secret Life for CIPID and for Uganda was the equivalent of the baby A case in Kenya for us. Because litigation is not a common thing here in Uganda, so going to courts and all of that is not something that we do so often, just because of the nature of our society. But telling stories as a way of breaking silence, as a way of just taking up space, is something that is a part of us. It's something that we do. It's something that characterizes us. So this is how we saw My Secret Life, as a way to engage with our communities, our duty bearers, our religious leaders, to go to them with kind of this motion picture, a very brief motion picture that has people telling their stories and their experiences in their own voices, and get Uganda to engage with the issue, because it was also a strategic move.
It's intersex stories?
Yes, intersex stories. It was also a strategic move, to, instead of saying, look, here's a child, because we did have children who had been mutilated in clinics and hospitals, but instead of going the legal route, we went this route to kind of really appeal to people's sense of humanity, see what these realities are, what the experiences are, what the repercussions are of some of the interventions that people are experiencing
at birth.
Yeah, and so we put together a number of children, mothers, intersex young people to tell their stories. Those who were, up to it, we had to explain a lot about what that visibility could cause, what could come out of it. So there was a lot of that counseling beforehand, and we put together that that film, that documentary, as the first piece that shows Black faces, puts Black faces to the story or to the experience, to the intersex experience in Africa. Because initially we had something from Australia, and that movie, that documentary was called Is It a Boy or Is It a Girl?
But it is foreign.
It was foreign, it was foreign. It was white parents, a white hospital in Melbourne, I think in Australia. You could not relate to it at all. The issues were completely different.
To the context.
Yes. And we had used it a couple of times, but you could see that people were not relating to it.
Right.
So we put this together as our bullet, our bullet into the community, into the media, to
Yeah.
put black faces to the intersex
Mm.
experience. And with
Mm.
that documentary, really, there was such a burst of visibility
Mhm.
and surprisingly also understanding.
Mm. Mm.
After that, we started to get so many calls about people were saying, "Oh, I have a cousin. I know this
Wow.
person. Can you help? I can." I
Impact.
think that about that year, after
Yeah.
screening, um, my secret life, it was our
Mm.
busiest ever, and it's one of the times that started to inform how we plan, how we program, as an organization, as an initiative.
Wow. Julius, in which year was this shot and where did it screen?
Um, we screened it for the first time in 2012
Ah.
at the International Intersex Forum in Stockholm.
Mhm.
This was one of those rare and the only kind of international intersex space
Mm. Mm.
that was being held at the peripheral of the bigger Ilga World conference
Wow. Yeah.
in Stockholm. Though that was the very first screening in 2012.
Okay. And in Uganda, in what kind of spaces did it screen? Was it screened?
In Uganda, our strategy was
The distribution.
it was we did distribute it to a couple of people, but that was in Kenya, and we
Yeah.
also shared with colleagues in Rwanda who could use it. But the
Wow.
strategy that we took in Uganda was to take it to the communities. So every
Yeah.
time we would do outreaches in Tororo,
Ah.
in Barara, in Jinja, as a way to actually get people to break the ice.
Yeah.
We would screen
Screen
this
it.
and then get people. Yes, because some of these things, these
Mm.
experiences are not by virtue of our culture. We don't speak so much about some of those things that are quite intimate
Yeah.
at home, and
Mhm.
so people come to a meeting and they want counseling, they want all of those things, but it's not
Mm.
so easy to
Yeah.
say everything and to be very open and to be safe and to feel safe. So
Mm.
the screenings were to create that space, that
Right.
safety,
Mhm.
especially for mothers, because there are many
Mm.
other interconnected issues besides this intersex child. There's the marriage itself, the in-laws,
Mm.
all of those, so many conversations going on.
Mm.
So we were screening it during those community outreaches to break
Mm.
the silence and to get people talking, but also to get people to feel that there are other people and in my country,
In our country,
there are other
yes.
people talking and they're not far. They are
They're
just
in
in
the other
another district.
district. They're in the other
Yes.
town. So near.
Yes. So
That was a
so we
good
did
start.
that, but absolutely, and we shared it also, with the Uganda Human Rights Commission.
Right.
We shared it with World Vision, with
Yeah.
all the places where we thought intersex
Yeah.
children and people could find safety, could find support.
Yeah. I like that everything that you have talked about today is still applicable today. Like it are
Yeah,
resources that can actually be
yeah,
used today and can change a lot of
absolutely,
lives. I can't wait for
absolutely.
us
We
to
need
screen.
more.
Like,
We need
well,
more.
before we get more, we have these, and we need to. I
Yeah.
think your papa here at Trans and Intersex History Africa, you should let us screen. Have days where we screen some of these things for
Yes.
people
Yes.
to watch because these
Absolutely.
are resources. But
Absolutely.
before we go into you
And
breaking
I
into,
tell you what, before we go,
yes, please.
besides that, there is more documentaries, short films
Yeah,
came up after that in South
right.
Africa. If you
Mm,
look, you find impressive um,
mm,
films coming from there. I think
mm.
Zambia as well. I think
Wow.
recently Nigeria has also done something. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Many other
And
young people are documenting. So definitely, I agree. We should find a way to screen these
and this is
African
on a
stories,
continent
intersex stories.
that
Yes,
it's on a continent that had no language, had no
yes,
no visible stories, lives. and now today
Yeah.
we can watch them on our television sets. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you. But before we
Absolutely.
go into the global engagements and spaces, we've had intersex activists here before,
Yeah.
from different parts of Africa, and they've
Yeah.
had interesting stories, testimonies to
Yeah.
share. We
Yeah.
had these ones, I think they were from Ghana, who actually used the strategy of, reaching out to traditional leaders and, making them a part of their, allies. And
Yeah.
traditional leaders actually today will speak out. Like there were the mothers, queen mothers in Ghana or something like that. These are very respected traditional leaders. And I'm wondering, in Uganda, have you, CIPID or the movement today, intersex movement, been engaging, have they gotten to engage with the traditional leaders as a strategy to educate our people, for especially those who are not able to see movies, films and stuff like that, but are leading
Yeah.
communities in the rural areas that have
Yeah.
intersex children?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Most definitely.
mm,
At SIPID, I think one of the things that we take as it's a huge tenet.
mm,
It's language,
mm,
and all our advocacy,
mm,
including even in that my secret life, you find that
mm,
people were led to speak in their language. If someone could speak English,
mm,
maybe, but we did subtitles.
mm.
So, but language has a very, very intimate kind of connection with culture and
Yeah.
tradition.
Mm. And
So,
community.
so from the beginning and up to now, and I think it has caused us some trouble sometimes
Mm, mm,
on the international stage. Not trouble, but a little bit of contention here and there, which we have
mm,
explained and people have got.
mm.
Even when we're using terms or terminologies, we have always insisted in using language that resonates with our
With the people.
elders, with the,
Yeah.
with the, with the people, the custodians of our
Yes.
societies,
Right.
because it is here that we want to stay safe. It is
Exactly.
here that we want support.
Mhm.
It is here that we want recognition of any kind. So if the
Yes.
people that are custodians of these authorities do not
Mm.
understand what we're saying or do not relate to our experiences, then we're
Mhm.
not doing anything.
Yeah.
So
As
if
an
I look
African
at
child, you don't come and say,
absolutely,
I, 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 I,
absolutely,
I am gay, for example. They
absolutely,
don't understand
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is still very pertinent even now. So
Mm.
you look at who these custodians are.
Mm.
There's the faith element, and the faith element has Christians, as Christianity has Islam, has
Mm.
traditional religions, has all,
Yes. Yes.
So all of these people you have to look at
Mm.
and engage within that
And at their
respect.
level, in a language
Yes,
that they understand.
yes, because they are custodians
Right.
of the rights that you are seeking for, but mostly the community and the support.
Mm.
Then you have to look at the parents and that kind of structure. The parents,
Right.
the elders,
Mm.
you know,
In Africa, even the neighbors are parents.
even the neighbors, people that the educators,
Yeah.
headmasters, all of these people.
Yeah.
And then we have traditional birth attendants, people who
Yes.
help, who assist women to give birth, but they're not in the hospital,
Right.
and they can do anything. If
Mm.
an intersex child is born right there and then,
Yes.
they can do anything. So
Mhm.
we have had to engage with those. We have
Mm.
established partnerships with village health teams who
Mm.
reach out to traditional birth attendants, but we also have community outreaches that look for people who work for government, like district education officers, district health officers, but also
Mm.
these traditional leaders, these
Mm.
elderly men that are sitting there who
Mm.
sometimes are also called medicine men, but there are also
Mhm.
others who are just stalwarts in
Mm.
society that you
The
have gone
ones,
to.
the very ones to whom a child will be brought to as a
To
witch.
name, to name, so yeah.
Mm.
So
Or when they are
we
being witch hunted, they are brought to those very men.
absolutely,
Here is a
absolutely,
witch, just because they are intersex.
yes, yes, yes,
Mm.
and we discovered that. Yes, and I will say it here. You know it, I'm sure, Victor, and maybe
Mm.
even the people that are listening to us know it.
Mm.
In much of Africa, but I will speak for Uganda. We
Mm.
have laws on the books, you know, they are there. But actually, the actual law, lies in the hands of these custodians of society. If they will protect you, if they will understand the issue, it is less likely to become a legal issue or a crime if society
Mm.
doesn't consider it so. You know,
Right.
many of these, like the anti-homosexuality bill, when you see all of those things that are criminalized,
Mm.
that cry seems to be coming from these custodians who are saying, oh, no, 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 our children are being invaded. These people are doing this to our children. It is that cry that the legislators are responding to.
That's right.
And so if you do not engage them to
Yeah.
understand and to support, then whatever you do in court is really useless because we don't live in the court. our
Exactly.
society our society is such that we live in communities, we live with families, and once that connection is not made between society and law, then we are not really doing what we should be doing. So even in Uganda here, that has been a strategy from the beginning. We do more kind of community engagement, changing hearts and minds, than we do litigation. In fact, at CPID, litigation is not really even on our. I don't know about the new leaders, but at least as a technical advisor, I've not seen it. It
Yeah.
wasn't there in the beginning. I've not seen it from the new leadership yet, because we still believe in kind of change coming from the bottom up rather
Because
than.
anyway, for the 12-year-old boy that you supported back in 2003,
Yeah,
whichever law changed somewhere, even if laws had changed in a parliament, in his village, nobody knew about the law. They needed
absolutely,
your teaching, they
absolutely,
needed your support,
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah,
So, our friends out there, this is International Intersex Awareness Day, and this is how we have chosen to celebrate it here at Trans and Intersex History Africa with one of our founders, Julius Kaggwa, and a pioneer in the African intersex movement. We will have a short break right now and we'll be back with the next segment of our show. Thank you very much. And welcome back to you, all our viewers and listeners. I hope that was a great break. Uh, Still, we have Julius Kaggwa here from Uganda, founder of CIPID, the first intersex organization outside of South Africa. Now we have explored the work of CIPID and Julius' contributions to that. We are seeing the intersex movement in this story growing from scratch. And now we're going to move into international forums, international intersex forums. As we celebrate International Intersex Awareness Day, let us revisit these forums and what their impacts have been on the intersex movement in Africa. So the first intersex international forum must have been 2011, Julius. There was one 2012, 2013, and probably 2017. Uh, uh, where we have had representation from Africa and from African intersex people. Julius, could you please take us down that road? How do we get into those spaces?
thank you, Victor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do we get into these spaces?
Mm.
There were some intersex voices on the international scene, in the US, in the Netherlands, who were beginning to have conversations.
Right.
And people were organizing across other movements as well. And so those allies that were talking about human rights across different issues, Kaggwa provided a space because of their collaboration with these activists at, I think, the Intersex Society of North America, Hida Viloria, those people. And then there were other activists in Europe, the Miriams in the Netherlands, trying to seek a space where they could have a collective voice. And so that is how the first International Intersex Forum happened in Belgium
In
in
Belgium.
2011. Yes. At that point, Sally Gross, who was actually the very first intersex voice on the African continent. She was a white woman, based in South Africa. She was a South African. She was a former priest, and such a dear intersex lady and a friend, a really close friend. She was at the time the person who was engaging, and her advocacy was pretty much litigation.
Right.
She was very vocal at that time in South Africa. And as you know, South Africa, even then, was rubbing shoulders more with the West than with Africa.
That's right.
And,
That's
and,
right.
and so, during research and all of that, I think that it was a small group of activists in the global North found Sally was the closest person there,
Yes.
and she was the only African,
Wow.
white African at that meeting, and she represented very, very well and shed light on the fact, that there was other voices. It was
On the
only my
continent.
voice. Yeah, it was only my voice. But
There's
she did-
another voice from the continent.
Yes, but she
May
raised.
she rest
Oh
in
yes,
peace.
absolutely. Yes, there she is. She raised that. So that happened then, and there was a statement, a brief statement that came from that meeting. And what I do know also is that that group of activists decided that this should be, a regular kind of occurrence, that they should make space like this at every ILGA World meeting. So then came the next one in 2012. Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
That's okay. You are needed, man.
Yeah. Then came the next one in 2012
2012.
in
Yeah.
Stockholm. Yeah. In Stockholm, I was at that one. In Stockholm, and it was then also that we screened for the first time My Secret Life.
Was Sally there too?
And yeah, no,
Was Sally there?
Sally. Unfortunately, Sally only went to the 2011 one. She never came again to any other.
Wow. But she was still with us.
She was still with us until 2014. But at that time, her health had started deteriorating. There were many issues. She was still working for the South African government, going into retirement. But and this is like maybe a subject for another day. But she was doing a lot of her activism voluntarily. She wasn't being paid to do activism, and litigation and all of that. As you know it, research, go to court, come from court, do all of that. I think it did take a toll on her. But so she never came back. Because I think she developed disability issues as well. We never had the opportunity to be with her again in another meeting. So she didn't come to Stockholm. I was there, but during the Stockholm meeting, visibility had started. This is, we're talking about three years into Sipid's activism, several years into Sally's activism. We had another voice from South Africa, Lompo, very young at that time. Lompo back then, we used to know him as Ntabiseng, but
Mm.
he's in Lompo now. Lompo was at that meeting in 2012. There was
Mm.
Lexi also from Jinsi Yangu in Kenya in
Ah,
that meeting. So we were,
that's the
there, at least
2012,
that was the
2012
2012,
forum in
yeah, in
Stockholm.
Stockholm, in
Right,
Stockholm.
right.
Um, and then we had the other one in 2013 in Malta,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, we Lexi did not come to Malta, but
Mm-hmm.
Lompo came to Malta, and
Mm-hmm.
then there was another black activist there, but a black American activist,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Sean Cipher Wall, right now was also um, in Malta.
Okay.
So, I mean, you could see that there was like that kind of enlargement of voice
Mm.
and presence of black,
Mm.
because it was so important for me, black
Yeah.
intersex faces.
Black
Initially
intersex
it was
spaces, but
african
also African.
african but then
Mm.
we started to get also some
Yes.
faces
From
from
black people
beyond. Yeah,
from the global
absolutely,
north.
from the,
Right.
yeah, from international
Right.
scene.
Mm.
And around about that time, as an international movement, people began
Mm.
talking about statements that are not just to put on the shelf, but
Mm.
statements that create agency in the nation, in our own states.
Mm. Mm.
We're beginning to talk about agency that comes from the nations, from the states, and
Mm-hmm.
going to the United Nations.
Right.
Like saying this, we are saying this is what we need, but who are we telling?
Right.
We are coming from different countries. So do
Mm-hmm.
we take these statements back and say to the German government? Do we take these statements and say to the Netherlands government, to the South
Mm-hmm.
African government? And then people felt there was this body that brings different states together, the United Nations space. And people
Right.
started to say that conversation around how to engage the United Nations started
Mm.
there,
Started in these forums.
in that forum in Malta.
The
And the Malta,
2013.
yes, that Malta in 2013, that Malta
Mm.
meeting was very, very pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we had, after that, did we have another one? I don't think that
Uh,
after that we had
what
another
I
one.
have
After that,
read so far, I see that you had another one in 2017.
yeah, after that we had a few years, about 3 years, we
Mhm.
had another one in 2017. But
Mm.
I want to speak about that gap,
That gap, yes.
because that gap of 20 between 2014 and
14,
2017,
16.
it
Mm.
was around there, we had the 2013 Malta, then we had the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in Uganda. All of
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah,
advocacy was there. And then, everybody was talking about this bill in Uganda. It kind of just wreaked havoc,
right.
everywhere. And
Mm.
then 2014, we had Sally left us. Sally died in 2014. There was a lot of talk within the intersex movement around wellness, about kind of
Mm.
the cost of voluntary activism,
Yeah,
and the toll that it takes, um,
on
you know,
individuals. Mm.
on individuals,
Mm.
and how we need to begin to strengthen our organizing and organizations, and look for funding and pay people, and
Right.
all of that. It was
Mm.
a time of great reflection for the movement.
Mm.
In that same year, around there, 2013, 2014, because of the law and all of those things, we were losing people
Mm.
in the movement beyond the intersex movement, people that we were
That's
working
right.
with, including yourself. People were
Mhm.
leaving the continent.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and that destabilized a lot of
Those were
the
tough years
organizing,
for
the
everybody.
structures, that
Mm.
were in place.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but also, during that time, it was one thing after the other. It is past
Mm.
2014, because of all of this momentum of organizing. It was, we had it struck down by Parliament. Of course, it was on a technicality, but it was just a period of intense activism there. But we also had, at the African Commission, we had started engaging. Yes, there was the International Intersex Forum, and talk about the United Nations. But some of us who are coming from the African continent, we are thinking, what other mechanism, human rights mechanism, closer to us than the United Nations, do we engage? Is it the African Court? Is it the African Union? Is it the African Commission on Human and People's Rights? And so we started to engage with, groups like UHAI, who were, willing to support us to go into those spaces and engage our own leaders, our own mechanisms alongside, so all of those conversations were going on. And at that time, in around 2014, the African Commission had passed a resolution, the 2751, which was sexual minorities, but it did not include intersex people per se. It was LGBTIQ people and all of that. So as a CIPID, engaging with colleagues, other allies, including at the University of Pretoria, the Human Rights Center there, we're beginning to have conversations around, if the West, if we go and take our issues to the United Nations, that's great. But what is nearer to us as well? What will our own leaders listen to?
Exactly.
More quickly, and be happy to implement.
It will make sense to them.
Yes. So that was happening within those years. And after that, we had the opportunity to meet again as an international movement in 2017 in Amsterdam. And at that time, because of all of this organizing in those 3 years, we had more Africans now in the international space. We had young people coming from Malawi. We had young people coming from Zambia. We had the Kenyan, we had Uganda as well. So you see that the Amsterdam International Intersex Forum felt very different. And it was bigger, the biggest of them all. We had 40 activists there.
Wow.
And really and at that point, remember, even in 2015, we had the opportunity to actually go to the United Nations. I was part of that team. I was part of that team that got the opportunity to represent the movement at the United Nations, where a team of 5, with me representing Africa. We had Kimberly representing North America. We had Haika from Asia. We had Morgan from Oceania. We had Dr. Dan from Europe. So in that gap, a lot of activism, a lot of progress was made in terms of.
There was a lot of growth.
Absolutely. So by the time we met again in 2017, it was a completely different field, a very different conversation in Amsterdam. And after that, I mean, a bust. The intersex movement is just going places. Since then, of course, we had COVID 3 years after, but still, the story is very, very different for the intersex movement since that meeting in Amsterdam.
From your narration, you can see it growing, and having been, in the middle of a lot of things in the earlier years, we had the word intersex. We had it. That word, we used it everywhere. LGBTIQ. L stands for this. I stands for intersex.
Yeah.
But we did not have intersex faces.
Absolutely.
We didn't have those. We didn't have a lot of knowledge. And yet today, when you talk about LGBTIQ, the I is a reality. Activists will show up. They have been on this show. They are all over the internet as intersex people. And, your narration really draws the picture for us that there has been a lot of progress in such an African intersex movement. Because this is a very short time. That is, I don't know what magic this movement has used, but you have moved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
but thank you so much for your contribution. So I see that in 2015, again, when you mentioned that, this is where you say Uganda produced its first national. That's what I saw. Its first national report on violations against intersex people,
Yes.
which was a big milestone for CPID and
Yes.
allies. Can you tell us
Yes.
about that? Is it true that Uganda produced that?
Yeah, well, that work was a collaboration. And I mean, Victor, we are having this conversation here about my own engagement or involvement in this journey and my
Yes.
own contribution to it. But
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's been a journey of collaborations,
Yes.
uh, of many people kind of, pitching in here and there. And that
Yes.
2015 kind of
Mm.
historic compilation
Mhm.
of violations and experiences of intersex people,
Mm.
just really telling the traumas and the encounters at doctors' hands, at community duty bearers' hands,
Mm.
even at family level, at policy level, all of those. So in 2015, we collaborated with a few other organizations in Kenya,
Mhm. Mhm.
in Rwanda, in Burundi,
Mhm.
to kind of put together a
Mhm.
story that shows exactly what people go through, what
Right.
is done to them, and why, what makes it wrong. What exactly happens and what makes it wrong.
Mm.
And that report was something that we did share with the African Commission
Ah,
on Human and People's Rights. It was also shared with other people, including the United
the
Nations
United
Office,
Nations,
High
right?
Commissioner of Human
Yes.
Rights at the UN. It went out and it became a reference, at least for the continent. Because remember, Sally had done litigation in South Africa,
Mhm.
mainly talking about the right to citizenship.
Mm.
That was a very key issue for her.
Mm. Mm.
And as for all of us, most of the time our activism starts because we're trying to get a place for our own safety. We want
Right.
something and they will not give it to us, and we
Yeah.
take them to court or something,
Yeah.
and yeah, and we say, no, why are you denying me this? I'm
Yeah.
entitled to it. Let's go to court. Let's all of that. So
Right.
Sally had kind of documented some things, but within the South African context,
Yeah.
and it was very much tied to denial of documentation of citizenship, you know.
In
And
South Africa.
this
Mm.
report kind of complemented that, looking at our region and looking at violations at the lived reality level, not so much the legal aspect. That was part
Mm.
of it, but things
Mm.
that people encounter every day that
Mm.
make it difficult for them to live their lives, to move on, that kind of lead to situations like suicide, lack of
Mm.
productivity, and all of the things. Even things
Mhm.
that lead to flight from
Mhm.
one country to another, it lead to
Yeah.
kind of forced migration, a whole range of those things.
Mm.
Of course, with a focus on violence within medical settings,
Mhm.
and traditional settings where mutilations occur in an effort to fix a baby,
Mhm.
make them either a girl or a boy. All of those things, the lack of counseling, the lack of consent, all of the things. And it was really pivotal. I do know that
Mm.
the Uganda Human Rights Commission did use that report,
Wow.
um, especially, in feeding or informing
Mm.
the parliamentary human rights committee and health committees at that time, that
Mm.
at least managed to get us into the registration,
Right.
the birth registration kind of law. Of course, there were, the language is not human rights focused, but at least there is acknowledgement that intersex babies are born. They are a reality in our midst. And
Right.
if a baby is born that way, they should have the opportunity to either change their
Yeah.
sex on their registration birth certificate,
Right.
or at least until they are 18.
Hmm.
They have a window to go back and forth. Of course, there is the backing of doctors and all of that, but at
Yeah.
least it kind of led to that. The registrations act, inclusion of intersex people in the Registrations Act in Uganda.
Wow. I'm sure that we have most of these resources on at our digital archives, Trans Intersex History of
Absolutely. Yeah.
Africa, and
Yeah.
people look for these resources. All these resources, actually, once you have the resources that Julius is talking about, you know what to say to the crowds. You know what to say to the chief. You know what to say to the pastor. You know what to say to your neighbor. You know what to say to a parent of an
Yeah.
intersex child. These are such powerful resources. And Julius, thank you for sharing about this for the movement. On this day, this is a special day, and this is real awareness creating for the
Yeah.
movement. Yeah, but moving fast forward, and if you find anything that we are missing in between, please let us know. But right now, we know that we have the African Intersex movement. You know, and listeners and viewers, I want you to remember where we were at in 2003 in most of Africa. Now
Yeah.
we have,
Yeah.
today, 2025, we have the African Intersex Movement.
Yeah.
And there are conversations about the proposal of a model law to protect intersex persons across the continent. Julius, how did AIM come to life, the African Intersex Movement, and what is the vision behind the model
Yeah.
law that is being proposed for the
Yeah.
continent?
I mean, I do love to tell stories sometimes when it suits, when it helps, to make a
Yeah.
point. But I would say AIM,
Mm.
AIM was officially kind of started in 2017
Uh,
and formalized in 2019.
ah.
But the making of AIM actually goes back, is a series of engagements that goes right back to Sally Gross. I mean, my first encounter with Sally Gross
Ah.
in the late 2000s, 2009, when she was kind of trying to put Intersex South Africa together.
Mm.
And we had the opportunity to talk about what activism could look like on the continent. It was just the two of us, remember, at that time.
Mm. Mm.
And she had all of these thoughts. I had all of these thoughts,
Mm.
which seemed impossible. Right now, what we see is something we had in our vision,
Yeah.
and that is where those thoughts started. How do we
Right.
how do we break that silence, break the fear that people have, to
Yeah.
encourage young people to step out and talk
Mm.
about their experiences and take up space and make some demands and make connection,
Mm.
stop the isolation. So that is where it starts in Woodstock in Cape Town,
Right.
you know and then an ally comes into that mix. And Sally actually did request me and say, are you being paid for the voluntary work that you're doing at CPID? CPID had just started. It was just forming at that time.
Right.
And I said, no. And she said, I have a little bit of funding here. I could pay you for 6 months or 8 months to come
Mm.
and coordinate Intersex South Africa and help me put a few documents together, some of those things.
Right.
Because I am in government and all of that. And I did actually get a work permit and go
Mm.
and support
Do this.
Sally
Yes.
in setting up Intersex South Africa. It was being housed by Bernadette Mutien
Mutian,
from
yes. Thank
Engenda.
you, Bernadette.
Yes, Bernadette was kind of housing
Big
that
time ally.
within,
Yeah,
yeah, within Engenda. And
yeah.
I went and spent about 6 months working with
Mm,
Sally on Intersex South Africa there.
mm,
But during that time, I met Lizzo,
mm.
who was an ally, but a fiery ally, and I mean just so committed to not just intersex but also trans activism.
Yes.
And she's neither of
Yeah,
these things.
yes.
But so we connected, and long story short, all of those engagements led us to Lizzo's kitchen, where we started saying, okay, how do we further
Mm,
this conversation that we've been having with Sally? How do we further this, bring intersex people
mm,
together and trans people at that time? It was not
mm,
really exclusive. And that is
mm.
how we birthed that exchange program, where
In the
SIPID
kitchen.
in the kitchen, in Lizzo's kitchen in Freduk,
Yeah.
in freedom.
Kitchen
And,
conversations.
and
That's the
if you
topic.
know Lizzo, if you know
Yeah.
Lizzo will
Mm.
make up a whole project, how everything will
Yeah.
run. With by the
Yeah.
time we're done with our tea,
Over
we
a
knew
cup of
exactly
tea.
where to go. We knew exactly where to go. And so
Yeah.
I I returned to Uganda after
The
that
six
short
months
kind of
period.
engagement with Intersex
Mm,
South Africa to
mm.
start on this exchange program and begin to reach out, because remember at that time we had had there is this and the other, but still I was the only
Yeah.
Black African intersex
Mm-hmm.
voice. But then we got other people,
Mm,
young people who were trans and all of that, and we started that exchange program.
mm-hmm.
And then little by little, we started to get to know other intersex young
Mm,
people. And
mm-hmm.
that exchange program led to Transitioning Africa, which was a collaboration between TIA, which is Trans and Intersex Africa, based in Pretoria, Gender
Yes.
Dynamics, SIPID, and we started to kind of put together trainings to support leadership development of young intersex and trans people. And then
Through these
that
exchange programs.
those exchange programs, but then we
Mm,
got them Transitioning Africa to just bring them together so
right.
people can connect, talk about their visions, how they
Mm-hmm.
want the work to unfold in their countries, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
support they need. And that did actually happen. People
Mm-hmm.
started to see what they wanted to do, and they went out to do it. They went out and started organizations
Mm-hmm.
in South Africa, in
Mm-hmm.
Kenya, in
Mm-hmm.
Uganda here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of an explosion, mainly of the trans movement, but
Mm-hmm.
also strengthening
Interest.
of our own movement as CIPID, as an intersex
Right.
movement. And so, in that growth of CIPID, we took back the exchange program as CIPID and said, okay, the trans people, the trans movement is taking root. What do we do for the young intersex people? So we
Mm,
opened up at CIPID and said, people can come to Uganda and
mm,
see how we do community engagement, how we engage with allies, how we engage with elders. Remember, that
mm.
strategy that we have to keep close to the ground where we need the change to happen.
Exactly.
Much as we are in the international space, but we must
Mm.
not lose, our footing where
The
we
logo.
need change to happen.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
Mm,
we kind of use that as a model.
mm-hmm.
And we got young people coming from Zambia, coming from Kenya. Kenya was the very first one to come here.
Mm,
Then we had people coming from Zimbabwe, from Zambia, from Malawi,
mm-hmm.
and they went back and started organizations in those countries.
Mm,
But we continued to provide, technical support, working documents for them to
mm,
kind of, work with, all of those
mm,
things. And it was in those engagements, those technical support engagements, that people started to talk about a collective. How do we come together? Because people were still isolated. They had started organizations, they had no funding. We had to find
mm,
a collective space to see how do you plan around sustainability, around growth, around
Right.
fundraising, around all
Mm.
of those things. And
Mm.
you know, after that we got support to meet together in 2017 in South Africa,
Wow.
in Johannesburg.
This
And
is
that
like,
is 2017.
are you talking about intersex activists from across the
From
globe?
different countries, yeah, from Nigeria, from
Wow.
South Africa, from Uganda, from Kenya, from Malawi, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, you know.
Wow.
And many of those had passed through our exchange program at CIPIT. So we met there, hosted by Iranti, supported by the Intersex Human Rights Fund. And that is how AIM is born. We
Wow.
make a statement there, and people
That
are
was
like,
in
this is great.
2017, you said?
Yeah. People are like, this is great. We can, can we kind of make this a collective? Can we formalize this? Can we come up with a committee that can help these conversations? Because up until that
Mhm.
time, it was either CIPID supporting technically
Mhm.
or Iran is supporting technically. But people needed
Mhm.
now to look at structure. How do we build structure? And those conversations went on 2017, 2018, until 2019 at the Changing Faces, Changing Spaces conference in
Right.
Nairobi,
Nairobi. Yeah.
in Naivasha actually, that
Mhm.
the AIM was formally launched there.
Wow.
And I cannot tell you, Victor, what was in my heart. That moment lives in my heart forever. It was just a lineup of these young,
It
intersex
brings chills.
black intersex people on the platform in front of so many people, taking up space, speaking up. It was no longer a lone voice. And at that point I felt I am here to provide technical support and
Oh,
to be a resource. But the matter is passed on. I can do other
oh,
things.
oh,
um, and
oh.
and I'm telling you, since
Salute
then
to
we've had COVID. We've had many things, but right now there's a strong intersex presence all over Africa. You know, um, from where it started in South Africa and Uganda to Kenya to Tanzania to Burundi to Rwanda to DRC to Ghana to Nigeria to Tunisia to Malawi to Madagascar to Botswana to Namibia to Mozambique to Angola, to Swaziland, to Lesotho, to Zambia, to Zimbabwe. It's just phenomenal. To South
Anglophone, to
Sudan,
Lusophone, to Francophone.
we have Cameroon,
Yes.
we have Cameroon, we have
We've had a
Senegal.
Cameroonian here.
Yeah, we have Cameroon, we have Senegal. I mean, it's just incredible. And like I told you, we even have Arabic. We have Arabic and
In the
French. We have
Maghreb, yes.
Tunisia. Yeah, it's
Julius,
it's just
thank you. And
incredible.
I feel you because as you described the launch of AIM, I could
Yep.
feel my hairs that are not really there standing up in their paws.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know what that feeling is when you look
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
see. And also us here, you've taken us through that journey of
Absolutely.
where it all starts. That was
Yeah.
a long journey, just a
Yeah.
couple of years. You
Yeah.
in the rest of Africa, and
Yeah.
the move, how you all come moving, forward. Indeed, it's not just hype, but the intersex movement in Africa has really, it's like it's been on 100, what do they call that thing on the field, 100 meters per hour, the sprint. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Being like
sprint.
this,
That is it. That is
out of
it.
the blue, we are surrounded by intersex people. It's no longer a name, a
No.
word.
No.
So, man, thank you. And this story, especially with the formation of AIM, it brings us towards the end where we don't want to get. And Julius, I wanted you to leave us a special message, and I'm going to tell you what kind of message. But yeah, like I said, looking back, this is a very, very powerful journey. And it's shout out to CPID and everybody taking on that legacy and carrying it forward. And for all the African intersex people that are directly involved in this movement, we thank you. We thank you for taking this forward. And we can see where you have come from. And you're no longer to be hidden. You're no longer to be clapped and nothing comes out about you. Today,
Yep.
we speak, you speak, we speak together. And thank you
Yeah.
so much, Julius. Thank you so much to Sally Gross. May you rest in power, Sally Gross. Thank you for your contributions to all
Yeah.
this that we see today. Julius, I ask you to leave a
Yeah.
message. On this particular show, I think that the message I would ask you, because I would ask you to leave a deep 100 messages, one for me, people like me, one for intersex people, one for the babies who will be up, one for the parents, one for everybody. But I just want you to leave a message for intersex parents. Intersex parents today, people who have intersex children in their care,
Yeah.
or in the future, a message from you who has experienced a lot, who has held the hands of many, you who is fighting against the violations that are even committed in ignorance
Yeah.
on the continent and worldwide. We will leave you in a small box here alone to leave that message. Please introduce yourself again, how you want to introduce yourself, and leave a specifically message to parents today and tomorrow, or guardians today and tomorrow of intersex children. Studio, please let us have Julius alone. Don't forget to introduce yourself, sir.
Okay. Hello, my name is Julius Kaggwa. I am an intersex activist from Uganda. And on this 2025 Intersex Awareness Day, I just want to send a message of encouragement to parents of intersex children and, all people that are parents at heart, that babies and life is a gift from God, a gift that should be celebrated. And no particular situation should make that less of a celebration. The birth of an intersex child should not disrupt that celebration. And if you have an intersex child or an intersex niece or nephew, we can create change, we can create awareness, we can make our communities aware of these journeys. And change can only happen when awareness, when storytelling, when openness, when accountability are key parts of the spaces that we are creating for these children and for ourselves. You know, so that is my message, that life is precious regardless of how it comes to us. And so we must celebrate it, whether we have an intersex child or any other child, in the way that God gives them to us. Thank you, and a very, very happy Intersex Awareness Day 2025. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Julius, for walking us through this incredible history, one that you helped create. And we are very proud of you. And we thank everybody watching as we mark International Intersex Day of Awareness. Let's remember, visibility saves lives. The advocacy that we have seen and heard about also changes systems, and solidarity sustains movements. We must also add that engaging with our communities, as Julius has highlighted, changes our situations. Until next time, happy Intersex Awareness Day to everyone listening to us. We will see you next week with yet another special episode from Trans Intersex History Africa. Au revoir.